Welcome back to An Uncomfortable Truth. Today's episode is sponsored by Cane Footwear. Cane's mission is to create products that help renew and optimize people and the planet. Cane is a recovery shoe. The Revive is made from Brazilian sugarcane, and I honestly live in these down here in Florida. With all of my workouts and all of the on-the-go lifestyle that I have, I can wear them around town, after a tough workout, run, or just simply walking on the beach. Finally, I'm so happy that after all these years, there's a stylish EVA shoe. Thank you, Cane. And you guys can go support by checking out canefootwear.com.
Okay, you asked for it, and we're super excited to bring it to you. This is the first episode in our Forever Foundation series, the relationship series that Cavan and I will be doing together. This is going to be how to become a partner worth having. We hope you guys enjoy. And we're off. Are we off?
We're back.
Okay. You can see that our setup is a little different than last time if you're watching us. And if you're listening to us, maybe it sounds a little better. We've got a couple of different methods that we were trying to test out. We decided we thought we'd be more comfortable hanging out on the couch versus sitting in our two random chairs in our office.
Yeah, so being squeezed on a one little computer screen wasn't really what we wanted to do.
So, as with any new venture, you guys will watch us get better every episode.
Yeah, you're gonna grow with us. You're gonna be a part of it as we figure out what we like to do the best.
Yeah. So today's episode, number 2, technically in the series, because we're recording it second. Well, 2 in our podcast history, but number 1 of our series we're calling Forever Foundations. This will be our relationship series that we're doing together.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this series in particular because there's a lot of experience in life that had to take place the way it took place for us to be able to come together and have a conversation about it. And we just want to share that with you, right? By no means, I just want to let you know, we are not relationship experts.
Or coaches, like relationship therapists or anything like in that capacity at all. Again, like this really just comes from our life experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes that's enough because, what we've had in conversations with other people's thereafter our conversations and experience started happening, people had a lot of questions that we had for ourselves internally, and we'll get into those sort of things. And we've been able to share, so we figured we'd make a little series out of it to show you guys what it is that we're doing that's been working.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really important to reiterate and preface is that, Cavan and I have really only been dating officially since October. So we're not even like, we don't have like 10 years of relationship experience together. I think the thing that makes, and I want to touch on that a little bit too as we get into what we're talking about. As I was getting ready, I was just thinking about that, and it all leads back to why pay attention to us, why listen to what we're saying, and why be invested in, realistically, this is kind of like we labeled it as a self-help, like advice type of podcast. Because our intention is not to just sit around and talk, although that's what we're doing because it's what we're good at. Our intention is to add value to your life and give you something that's tangible, practical, that you can relate to and utilize as a tool to grow. So, I think the thing that's really important is that, like we have said in our introduction video, is just that Cavan and I are the type of people that are incredibly self-aware. We're very observant of things that happen around us, and we are incredibly intuitive. So when it came to us starting our relationship, I can't hear anything out of the left side of my headphones, so see what happens.
Technical difficulties, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, so, there it came back. That's weird.
Don't buy cheap.
Yeah, seriously, Amazon products. And in case there's a company out there that creates like good headphones and podcast mics and stuff, and they want to send us some for free or down,
please.
But yeah, so just to kind of step backwards, Cavan and I, when we got into our relationship, just right from the get-go, we came out real hot, and it was not with any naivete at all. I feel like this is probably the most mature and honest relationship that I've ever been in, for sure, but also have witnessed amongst my peers and indefinitely amongst my parents, who would be, like the example to lead by, right, as a kid growing up. So, yeah, just to kind of put that out there, that's a big thing. When we first started talking, we were just like, skip the bullshit and go straight to the meat of it.
Yeah, I came out swinging, and when and we spoke about it a little bit on the last podcast how my relationship ended, and at that point I was like, well, let me talk to somebody, and little did I know that we would begin how we began. But then once I saw who you were and what you stood for and what you were doing with your life, and you began to, I mean, I'm not sure the exact timeline now that we're looking into it, but the more I got to know you and what you went through, it really, you spoke to me without even having to talk about it, right? Talk about who you were, what you were doing, but like you just carried this presence and passion for life, and it opened the door for me to realize that everything that I had gone through in the years prior when things weren't good was a time period for me to figure out who I was. Because when I do look back at those moments, and if I didn't figure out who I was and what I wanted with health and life and all of those different things, then little would I know who I wanted to do that with. And I think that's a big part of starting a relationship, or like we said, building a foundation of a relationship, that each individual must know who they are and what they stand for, what they want out of life for themselves, and not rush, even though we jumped right into this.
Well, that was a big thing that I was really worried about with you, is that I had been single for 2 years, or I had been divorced for 2 years when we met. And I had dated casually and then dated semi-seriously. And I was definitely looking for someone who had been in the same boat. Like, someone fresh out of a relationship would have been very low on my list of ideal partners. And I think that speaks volumes to doing the work. Because I could have also easily been like, oh, I want to date someone who's been single for a while, but that doesn't mean that they were putting in the effort to become the version of the person or the type of partner that I wanted to actually be with. So that kind of goes back to taking some, just being flexible with your expectations too, where knowing what you want is incredibly important, but also understanding that some flexibility may be required in order for you to end up with the person that you want to be with, and vice versa. For me, it was important for me to be single and to be healed and to to become a partner that you would have wanted, because you were the ideal person that I'm thinking of that I wanted to date when I was single. It was incredibly important for me to be like, okay, I need to not jump from relationship to relationship or partner to partner or whatever it is. I need to figure out, who am I? Because I had been in a marriage for 10 years. So I was like, I need to figure out who I am unattached to another human being in a relationship, because now I'm going to be single and I need to know exactly who I am. So that's kind of the premise of our episode then today. And we have a few parts that are going to be in this series. And that's kind of the long-winded beginning of today. Today's episode is being a partner worth having, basically. So self-identification, self-awareness. And that's going to be kind of, I guess, what we chat about today, and the importance of evolving into the person that somebody, your perfect counterpart, would actually want to be with.
And I love that you say it that way, right? Because a lot of people are out there looking for this perfect partner when the truth is they don't know who they are. And, we've spoken about this before. People bounce from relationship to relationship to relationship, dating the same person without even knowing who they are along the way. So why not pause for a second and take a step and look back at your life to see who it is that you were living as, but then take a moment to look ahead to see who it is that you want to be. And once you visualize that, then you can backtrack to form a plan to take those first steps on acting, not just thinking or worrying or being anxious about what this person's life is going to be like, what other people may think about this version of yourself, but just taking a step in a direction that makes you feel confident on the inside. And, for me personally, that is what happened over the last 2 years of my last relationship, which was also a 10 year-long relationship, engaged the bulk of that time period. And we'll get into, well, I don't necessarily just want to talk about that, but it is, a part of who I am and who I've become. And in the last 2 years, right, starting with COVID and the global pandemic, it was a moment where I said, many people's character will not be developed, but it will be shown, right? It wasn't going to be a time where people grew into the person that they wanted to be, but they would really show their true colors. And unfortunately, for some people, like, they shut down and lived this life of fear. And for me, I'd said I wanted to take this as an opportunity to do more of what I loved, what I dreamed about. And I dove all into my work. I went into my work, and when we started Hidden Summit and we grew Hidden Summit, and in that I found a passion again for helping people in a different way that I could create, and surrounding myself with amazing people to make sure that we can get people to a place where they can think clearly on their thoughts. And this paralleled my own life.
Yeah.
However,
You took your own advice.
I took my own advice. So sometimes it works out. However, when I shut the computer down, I was alone in my own home, and it was nearly tragic, right? There was just no intimacy, no connection, and it's something that, I mean, you and I now know with our love languages. I highly recommend that if you are with somebody, you take the test and you really understand where the other person's coming from.
We are going to do an episode on it's going to be the last episode of this series, but we are going to do an episode on what we do to connect to one another. So, like, the love languages test, we've taken personality tests. I just made him take
The sex test?
Yes.
Sex
personality type.
We took a sex test and I passed with flying colors.
With flying colors. Sex personality test. So, like, your type of, I don't know, sex personality type. So, like, are you romantic? Are you, like, dirty? Those kinds of things.
Spiritual was another one.
So anyway, there's a lot of different things and tests and conversations that we've implemented into our relationship to understand each other better. A lot of that is being willing to be vulnerable too. But continue.
But it comes back to, in that time, like, when I was very passionate and being moved by my work, there was a lot of things that weren't being fulfilled for what I desired for myself, with being able to give love the way I wanted or receive it the way I wanted. And it really made me look at the future, right?
Do you think that was a compatibility breakdown between you and your ex, or do you think that was a lack of communication?
I think it was both. Right. I think I am not innocent in not, like, communicating and, like, totally understanding her love languages at that time.
Absolutely.
And it was something that maybe it was self-sabotage, for in some aspects. But the truth is, like, when we were young and we were dating, we had similar lifestyles and we were enjoying that. That's what we based the majority of our relationship on. However, our vision and our values in life were completely different. And as you grow and you live with somebody, and, it's this repetitive cycle with, like, less energy or less experiences happening on the day-to-day, right? Less learning with one another, then you just stack COVID on top of that in New York City in the middle of a global pandemic. It was a recipe for, like, an implosion of a relationship that, and she was the one who left me, right? And I'm the one who's like, this is going to work, because things were getting better, but apparently they weren't getting better. Too little, too late. I know that I'm at fault.
Well, you were feeling more happy and fulfilled in your work life, and so that was making you more optimistic too, probably, right?
Sure.
While as she maybe felt like she was drifting further and further away from you, because now you're doing something and becoming someone that was unrecognizable to her.
Right. And I think there was a lot of, again, this isn't what the conversation is about, but it goes both ways, right? Yeah. Like, I think
you have a rogue mustache hair. It's driving
me
bonkers.
That's what we like, right?
Okay, got it. I got it. It's good.
Thanks. For everybody watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
My mustache is now fixed. So, I just think that with the two of us, it was a long time coming, and we were two people for a very long time where we were like, this is, we said we were going to do this. This is what we need to do. It's how our parents were raised. Like, this is the way it needs to be. And, we can say, right, that I can say, I won't speak for anybody else, that I know that there was unhappiness very much so at the center of that relationship. And there was a lot more just frustration on both sides than that anyone ever needs to go through.
Yeah.
So that exit, right, the separation, what I did, I was like, we were set to go on a trip, and I was told the morning of that she wasn't coming, and I was like, oh, okay, we just went out to dinner last night, and that was a nice dinner, and then she said she's not coming back, and this is over, and I was like, oh, this is news. So I did go on the trip, and I met my brothers up in the woods.
She was supposed to go with you.
Yeah, because my sister-in-law and my brother's girlfriend were going to be there too, and it was this weekend that we planned. And I decided to go anyway, and I went up early by myself, and I just spent some time, like some hippie shit. Went up into the woods on a hike by myself, and just sat there and listened to myself, and I realized that I wasn't happy. She wasn't happy, and that's okay. And in that moment, I can choose to be upset, or I can choose not to be upset about this.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done, right?
Sure.
But then,
if it was really easy to just choose what you wanted, everyone would just choose what they fucking wanted all the time.
Right. Well, that's what we need to work on. Technically, we can, logically speaking.
We can.
But we are emotional beings, and that is much more difficult to take action on than it is to be spoken about.
Sure.
So and on that walk, I was just going through the woods, and it was a short hike, couple miles, but I knew where this very cool overlook was, and I got there and I just did nothing. And I couldn't remember the last time I actually did nothing. Like building this company over the last couple of years, and travel, and helping so many people, and bringing on coaches. I just sat still and in silence, and I realized that things are going to be okay, because I knew who I was more than ever and what I wanted out of life. And if I can just be me without having my guard up of worrying about somebody else who, where the compatibility was gone, who we developed into terrible communicators, beyond the point of return.
Yeah.
If I can take my experience from being in a position where I didn't do very well and learn from my mistakes, then I can 100% be with somebody eventually, right? At this point, I wasn't like, oh, who am I going to go date next? Who am I going to marry tomorrow?
Yeah.
No. It was just like, hey, I know who I want to be, and I'm okay with this moment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let it process how it processes. And I think a couple hours later, you commented on an Ice Barrel post of me sitting in an ice barrel, and I was like, well, fuck it, I'm going to talk to this person who talked to me about potatoes a little while ago. And
I'm pretty sure I was like, I need to go back and read exactly what I said, but I was like, why does this turn me on when I watch you do this or something? Yeah. I think it was a very forward flirt.
Like, well, this is positive timing.
And at this point, your ex had broken up with you literally the day before, and I still had no idea that you were even in a relationship. And so I was hardcore flirting with him, not knowing, and he was not flirting back. And I'm just the kind of person that's pretty relentless if I want something. So I wasn't going to run away and hide because he didn't respond to a couple of other messages that I had already sent him. I was just going to get more aggressive, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I thank you for that, obviously, every day. I love you.
I love you.
But again, the whole point of this opening section is that without knowing it, I was able to figure out who I was by focusing on what was important to me.
Sure.
And I don't feel like I had the time and space to do that beforehand, because it was about work and rent and dating and fun and doing all these things and being social in New York City, right? As a 20-something-year-old. And then you get in a relationship and energy is high and lust is there, and one thing leads to the next, and it just makes sense to move in together and get a dog and get engaged, like, and it did in the moment, but
Sure.
you never pause and make a decision about, like, what do I want?
Yeah.
Because you think you want it, but, like, what have I done for myself? And I was actually talking with a friend of ours, Jared, and him and I were talking about this beforehand, and his grandmother said to him something that I'll remember. He told me, he was like, look, you never make any big decisions in your 20s, so that's your time to fuck up.
Yeah.
This is his grandmother.
For
and
real.
then he's like, you save all of your tough decisions and your life decisions for your 30s, because you kind of figure it out a little
You're
bit
a
more
little
by
bit
then.
smarter then.
Yeah, but we all want to grow up so fast. And
Sure. Freedom is exciting as soon as you get out of high school and you go into college, or you go into the real world or whatever it is, and you're not necessarily maybe living under your parents' roof anymore, and you're running around doing all kinds of crazy fun things, and you think that you're a big grown-up,
yeah,
but you don't have any life experience.
I'm still not a big grown-up. Let's be fucking honest here.
None of it. I don't think anyone ever becomes a big grown-up.
Right. I mean, so that's how I found myself.
Yeah.
And before we get into, like, the initial conversation connection about, what happened thereafter, I mean, your story is, I think, like, just way cooler than mine. Yes, like, tragedy in a sense of love and separation and what happened to you, but, like, how you explained it to me was just so exciting to see, like, what happened thereafter. How did you go?
I don't even remember how I explained it to you.
Well, you're just gonna have to tell the world now.
Hopefully the stories match up.
Don't worry, I'll say that they do.
Yeah.
But got married really young.
Yeah, I started dating my ex-husband when I was about 20 years old, and 21, and we got married when I was 24, and we were together a cumulative 11 years, and we were married for, I think, 8. So earlier when I said 10, I meant married for 8, together for 11. And we did the same thing. It was, you're in a long-term relationship, okay, get engaged. And there was a lot of external pressure for us to get engaged. Everyone thought that we were really good for each other because we were complete opposites, which apparently I needed someone complete opposite of me to be happy, because my mom was like, my mom said this specifically, and Mom, I love you. This is no knock on you, because she'll listen to this. But she was like, you're just really high strung, and he's very calm and chill, and he's just a good balance for you. And I was like, okay, in my mind thinking, all right, I must need that, because I must be just too high strung and too neurotic, and I needed someone to
you're
to chill me
20 years old, and, like, Mom knows best, right? Like, let me listen to her.
No offense, Mom, I love you, but my mom has 2 failed marriages, so maybe not the best person to take advice from. And she would be the first person to say, don't take that advice from me either. But when you're in your 20s and, there are adults older than you that you have, grown up with, and they're giving you advice, then you must believe it to be true, typically. So anyway, I got engaged, got married, got a dog, got a house. My sole purpose felt like, okay, I want to be, like, the best, coolest wife ever. Like, I remember saying that to myself. Like, I was all in on being, like, the ideal spouse. And to be honest, same thing. Like you said, you start making then decisions for the greater good instead of yourself. You stop going for things that are going to make you happy. And I think that's so incredibly important. And I, have said this before through social media. So if you follow me, you've paid attention to that too. But it's not your partner's job to make you happy. It's your job to make you happy. And it's their job to support your happiness. And that's how, for whatever reason, my face is very itchy. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm, like, scratching all over. So that was really important when Cavan and I started talking. I was like, or just me, I guess, when I became single then after getting divorced, and I'll go back to the story, but to highlight this so I don't forget, it was super important to me to start dating someone who had their own life that they felt very fulfilled in, because I wasn't going to come in and try to be someone's catalyst for happiness. I would like to add to your happiness, and I would like to support things that make you happy, but I want you to have a life that you already feel fulfilled in, and I just want to add to it. And so,
You do.
okay, good. So anyway, to digress, so there were, I guess it was kind of the beginning of the end, and if you're in my life already, you already know this story, but in 2018, my ex-husband and I were set to move to France for me to go study for my master's. And at the very last minute, he backed out, and I lied to everyone about it and said that it was a mutual decision and that it just didn't work out. And the airline had, like, coincidentally, the airline that I bought our tickets on went bankrupt, and so they canceled our flight. And then there was just like, a couple of other things that lined up that realistically probably were signs to not go through with it, but I was really devastated. And I tried very hard to come back from that, and I did forgive him, but I never forgot the fact that I never got to experience that. And the bigger thing was that he couldn't forgive himself. And so we went on for a couple more years trying to make things work and trying to get on the same page. But the reality was, just as you said, we got together when we were very young and our lifestyles aligned at the time. But our morals and our values and our expectations for the future, we just wanted to live different lives. And so it was this push and pull of like, who's going to make the other person happy, who's going to be the one to step up and do the work. And neither one of us, I think, were both willing to do the same amount of work. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, so I'll just say both of us.
Well.
And so that was it. So I was like, look, well, there was one specific night where I was just sitting on the floor sobbing, and there was really no remorse for the actions that had been taken to cause me to feel that way. And I was like, I'm done. This is it. I'm not doing this anymore. And up until that point, I had been felt really shameful and guilty that I even wanted a divorce in the first place. And so I continued to push myself through to try to make myself happy and make us both happy. And it just wasn't a two-way street. So,
well, I mean, that's not exactly how you told me. I feel like you left some details out. You took a trip. Talk about that trip.
The trip. Okay, yeah, sure. So I took a trip. This was 2019. This was coincidentally the trip that Amy and I became best friends, soul sisters.
Sup, Amy?
Sup, shout out, Amy. So yeah, actually it was my first time ever flying alone and taking a trip by myself. Amy and I intended to go out, and we did visit a friend together. However, I decided to go to California about 48 hours early.
Have you ever been to California before?
No, I'd never been to California. Desperately wanted to visit California. My aunt lived there for several years, and I always wanted to go out and visit her, but really couldn't afford it and couldn't take the time off of work to actually go do it. So I never did. And so...
Can we pause there for a
Yeah.
second? If you do not know who you are, or if you've never just done this before, 10 out of 10 highly recommend going on a trip to an unknown city by yourself.
Yes.
Bring a carry-on, rent a car, and just go do it.
Yeah. So I rented a little Airbnb. I rented a Mustang.
Heard that was the shit show, too.
Yeah, that was a shit show, too. Rented a Mustang convertible. Flew by myself to LAX. Took an Uber to a very sketchy parking garage. Picked up my Turo rental. And drove it to Santa Monica. And stayed in Santa Monica for a couple of days. But actually, it ended up being 24 hours by myself because of the Airbnb situation was... my flight got delayed and I got there much later. That's what it was. Anyway, so I'm staying in Santa Monica. I get up early in the morning. I drive over to the beach and I go for a run on the beach. And if you've never been to Santa Monica, you can run on the beach and look at mountains, and it's really cool. So I'm running on the beach. It's beautiful there. I'm looking at the mountains and I'm like, okay, like me being by myself and doing this whole thing by myself and running by myself and just reflecting, much like your moment that you had on your walk in the woods. I was like, this is what I want. I want to go on in life by myself and figure out exactly who I am and what I want to do. And I'm not giving up any more dreams, and I'm not spending any more time being unhappy. And that trip was definitely, or that moment and that day was definitely a catalyst. Me having gotten the courage to go by myself, go figure this out, travel by myself, go on this little trip, be in this. I went to dinner by myself. Like, I didn't meet up with anyone. That I had friends in the area, and I just did it all by myself before I went and picked up Amy. And I realized, like you did, that epiphany you had. I was like, everything's going to be okay. Like, I can be by myself. I can figure this out. I could absolutely be happy traveling the world and doing all of these things by myself, 100%. All the things that I had put off previously because my relationship did not allow for space to explore opportunities like that. And so then I pick up Amy, and Amy and I drive about 4 hours in the car together, having only previously spent time together in person, one other time for a very short period of time, and then communicated, on the phone. So anyway, Amy and I are traveling together, and it's a 4.5 hour car ride, and we are just pouring our souls out and deepest, darkest secrets out to each other, and falling deeply in love. I always say, like, she's truly my soulmate. Sorry, but Amy is truly my soulmate. And that was when I realized that there were so many missed opportunities in my life and so many relationships that I wasn't forging, and opportunities to just be truly who I was, because I was so concerned with being someone else's somebody.
Yeah, and I really, to what you're saying, there are so many parallels. I didn't even get into it with mine, right? I think that I've learned more about myself every single time I've traveled alone, eaten alone, worked out alone, walked alone. Doesn't matter if it's in the city or on the beach or on a hike. Like, when you are just trying to bounce from person to person, or you're in a relationship and
Codependency.
you're right, serving somebody else before serving yourself, you forget who you are and you identify as the other person that you're with as a couple. But one of the things that I want you to walk away with today is that you need to go live life by yourself.
Yeah.
And identify as who you are and how you want to live, and then bring that to the other person to form that foundation of what it is that you guys will both do together.
Yeah.
Right? I think, that's why I wanted you to tell the story, right? There are parallels.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
traveled to a place where you haven't been before. I had been to this place before, but not alone.
Sure.
You went out to eat by yourself. I went out to eat by myself. You went on a walk and just had nothing to think about but you, and you took in the world around you. Same with me. And you just, you can pause in those moments to say, everything's either going to be okay or it isn't going to be okay. But guess who gets to decide that? You do.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Because,
well, and I think so many people get held back too from even experiencing those epiphany moments because they're captive by fear. Like, they're not even willing to do it. Like, I could have easily just been like, yeah, I'm just going to fly in the same day as Amy and just pick her up and just focus on our trip. But I was like, I need this. Like, I need to go by myself and do this. Like, of course I was terrified. Like, I never flown by myself. Like, I'm pretty independent and confident, but even at that point, I really hadn't traveled a lot on an airplane to places, especially not places I'd never been to before. So it was an incredibly new experience for me as well. And that, I think, is the even bigger thing, is that new experience, the positivity, and the fear, I guess, of doing something new, honestly, typically is what kind of turns on that little light bulb in your head. Like, holy shit, there's so much to be discovered. And we say this all the time, like, everything you want's on the other side of hard. But, like, most people use fear as an excuse not to do new things, when in reality, the fearfulness is kind of where the beautiful things happen.
yes, the fearfulness is where the beautiful things happen, but I would challenge anybody who says they're afraid to do something that they don't even know what success feels like. So they're just more comfortable not doing anything versus challenging themselves and failing. But the only way that you fail is when you stop trying.
Yeah.
So by you not doing anything, you're actually failing worse than if you tried and then just lost, because you would learn a lesson and be able to grow and seize another opportunity from that experience in that loss. And you know what? For me personally, like I'm not as successful as I want to be. I know
Sure.
you're not as successful as you want to be. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't say that you fear success in life, in relationships, with yourself, in
Mm-hmm.
business, whatever it is, your career, your family, unless you just relentlessly try with consistent effort
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. And that's when things started to click for me
Yeah.
with my work. And then I was able to pause and put that towards me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And now we do that with one another
Yeah.
together.
Well, and that was a big thing too when I got divorced, I got fired, and I moved out of my first home that I ever purchased, all like within 90 days of each other.
That'll test you.
That will test you. Moved in with my grandma. Shout out, Mama. Moved in with my mama. Got fired by someone who I thought was my friend. I worked for her for a while. I was the last person to find out I was being replaced. And then I was asked to show up and train someone else for 2 weeks. Started my.
Did you do it though?
I did do it. I needed to get paid. I wasn't making any money in my business yet. Figured that out quick.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I had no other choice, honestly. And sometimes that's the best position to put yourself in is your back against the wall. God, my nose is so itchy. Sometimes that's the best position to put yourself in is your back against the wall and you have no other choice but to go forward because you literally cannot back up.
That's the only position where you will ever, you as in the general you,
Yeah.
me, like that. That's the only place I'll ever get anything done. If things are too easy, I make it harder so I get things done.
Yeah.
It's just whether it's a good habit or procrastination or I overthink. But the idea is like if it's too easy, it's too easy,
Yeah.
and I want to make it harder. And I find that
Yeah.
when my back's up against the wall and I have no choice but to do this one thing to put food on the table,
Yeah.
right, or do whatever it is we need to do for said situation, that's when it's going to get done and get done the best.
Yeah.
So,
Now I had all this time to figure out who I am in my professional life. I'm no longer working for anybody else. I'm starting my own business. Who am I? What does that mean? I'm single, so I'm no longer dating anyone or married to anyone. Still legally married at this point, but we're not together. We're not talking, and we're not seeing each other. So now I'm single. Who am I in a relationship? I started at a new gym. Who am I in this new environment? And I got to completely re-identify who I was in the world and now show up exactly how I wanted to. But it took a lot of effort and time for me to figure out who that version of Lacy was. Because up until this point, everyone knew me as Jared's wife, and I worked for so-and-so. And I went to this gym and I trained this particular type of fitness, and that was my identity. People knew those things about me. And so now I had a blank slate with just a lot more life experience.
So, I mean, in finding yourself, right? Like, what was it that you told yourself or did, like, take an action on to understand who it is you wanted to become, right? Because you could have gone through it sulking and saying, this is bad and I don't know who I am, but that's not your character, right? So,
Sure.
in the process of figuring out that there's more to life and more to Lacy, what was it, that you had to go through and take action on to, take the steps to where you are now? Because that's the, we're
Yeah.
still talking about like finding yourself. Mine
Yeah, I
happened,
mean, like tactically?
yeah,
Like,
mine,
what did I do
mine
specifically?
happened like during the relationship,
Yeah.
and then I had a choice to make thereafter, and yours happened after the relationship. Like it took place, and then you had to make a decision. So regardless of which way it, in the order that it occurs, things need to get done.
Yeah.
And what was your thought process through that all?
Sure. Well, I started saying yes to a lot of things that I wouldn't have said yes to before. And part of that was education. I was learning a whole new industry. So I was surrounding myself with, well, I guess the biggest thing was surrounding myself with a bunch of people, new people that had new things to teach me, but absorbing that and then being able to like consciously reflect too. So I had a lot of time to spend by myself now. I wasn't cooking for someone else or going out to dinner with someone else. Like I was doing everything alone. And so I had a lot of time to reflect on all of these things I was doing, learning a new industry, meeting new people at a new gym, getting to know them, and My friendships were evolving now too. Lots of friends were communicating with me and trying to help me figure out, who do I want to date? What does that look like specifically, Amy? We're talking about like who does an Enneagram 8? Who's compatible with an Enneagram 8? So now we're looking at like what kind of person do I want to date? What does that look like? But I
Or
was
what type of person do you not want to date?
yeah, not want to date is more specific. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, now I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to run my own business, I want to be with someone that understands that. So probably someone who owns their own business. That seems ideal to me versus someone who works for someone else and has a set schedule, because they're not going to understand the effort and requirement that my running my own business requires. Okay. Now I'm in fitness is kind of whatever, linear or not linear, but like parallel regardless. Like if you're in the gym and you work out and you're passionate about your health and your fitness, that's good enough. It doesn't matter if you do CrossFit or, jujitsu or whatever, bodybuilding, doesn't
So
matter.
if I just took bar classes all day, like you'd be okay with that?
I mean, as long as you,
No offense, it is really hard, but like,
as long as you were happy with your level of health and
can't even say it with a straight face.
no, probably not.
If I was a professional figure skater, you'd be okay with that too? Because that's really impressive.
Yeah, it is super impressive.
But I'd be at the ice rink all day.
Yeah, sure.
In Florida.
Yeah, that would be challenging. And now I'm gonna, move into a new area of town. So I have an apartment and I live in a new area. Geographically, do they live close to me? That was important. I want to be able to just close my laptop at the end of the day and meet you for dinner. I'm not trying to date someone long distance. See how that worked out for us.
I was doing really well until that point.
There was a lot of podcasting and reading and vulnerable communication with people who had my best interest at heart. So not closing myself off, not sitting in my apartment alone crying, binging Netflix reality shows and drinking myself into oblivion, putting myself out there in the world and having vulnerable, honest conversations with people.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. Like if we were able to slow down and like know what it is that you want, because you made a list to say like, well, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and that's enough to get started. If for most people, it doesn't have to be a huge list because you're not going to take them all on right away. But then you notice it wasn't about who you wanted to be with. Yes, that was some of what you just explained,
Sure.
but it was more so along the lines of what it is that you wanted for you. Like what would make sense for you as you knew who you wanted to become and the path you wanted to go.
Yeah, and as I started thinking about, and I truly did have a list of like my ideal partner. But a lot of those things,
it was literally me. Like,
it was
just
Cavan.
like
And a lot of those things on that list reflected he would be proud of me for X, Y, Z. He would encourage and support X, Y, and Z. Like it was so much less about he's 6'1" and has a beard and is muscular. Those things were important to me. However,
like trietary, so it was like for primary things and secondary, and then like you must have a beard.
Yeah, so much more of it was about, does he support me as a human being in the phase of life that I'm in? Also, it would be he's willing to grow with me and not, do this, or, we were able to sit down and have conversations about where life is going. Honest, vulnerable conversations that aren't uncomfortable and, combative.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get more into that in the next step of this series, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to like deep dive into that.
No,
right
no,
now.
but I just mean like me. So when I was identifying what kind of partner I wanted, I was like, I need to then be a version of me that he wants to do that for.
Right.
So that's where a lot of my motivation to continuously grow and become better and work on myself was like, if I want Cavan, let's say, Cavan embodies exactly the kind of partner I want, I have to be a version of Lacy that Cavan even wants to be with.
That makes sense.
Because if I'm a trash bag and Cavan's an A+, he doesn't want me.
Yeah, and I think like that's a good place to pause and say like, if anybody out there wants a version of someone for themselves, but they aren't upholding the lifestyle that said person would want to be with, then I will gladly say that you have no right to be upset about it.
Sure.
Right? Because if you spoke to me and then you were like a trash bag and you were out drinking every single night and
Sure.
you weren't working your ass off
I
and
was
you weren't going to the gym, I would have been like, who was
working
this?
a
Probably
terrible
would've-
job that I complained about all the time. Oh, and that's what brings me to the story I was going to tell you. And I know we're getting kind of long in this episode, but I think that this is a good conversation to have. I want to share one more thing. So, I had pretty shortly after my ex and I officially split up, I started dating someone, and we dated for about 3.5 months. So, other than that, I had only dated someone else exclusive. When I say dated, I mean exclusively. He and I weren't seeing other people besides each other. And we had a lot of chemistry. We had a lot of fun together. Physically, we had chemistry. Like, we would laugh. We enjoyed a lot of the same things. However, like the same Netflix shows and not even the same type of fitness, but like same type of music and things like that. So we had a lot of chemistry in a lot of areas, but I constantly found myself thinking, man, like him complaining about his job all the time is like, just fucking do something about it. Get a different job. Like, I got my own job problems. Like, I can't be listening to you complain about yours all the time. Like, okay, so he isn't self-motivated to go out and get another job. Okay, red flag, right? If there was like family things or friend things, I often was not invited to those things. Like, I was being kept a secret. And I was like, well, he just got out of a relationship not that long ago either. Maybe he just doesn't want people to know. Huge red flag, right? So we had a lot of chemistry, but we had very little compatibility. And this is something you and I talked about in the beginning of our relationship, because I listened to a podcast episode I shared with you where it talked about the importance of compatibility and chemistry. And so, on paper, this person or, the way that they looked was really great and our chemistry was there. But I constantly found myself wondering, like, okay, or thinking if he just did this or if he just did that or if he just behaved this way, he'd be perfect. And so I was constantly like, I realize it now, and it worked out for the best that he broke up with me. But like, that was something that was really hard for me as a single woman out there. If you're thinking about this when you're trying to date, because I know it's fucking tragic. I've been there. If he does not, if you can't see him supporting and loving and being involved with the version of you that you want to be, he's probably not right.
I think that goes for both sides.
Sure.
Right.
I can only speak for being a woman.
Right. I think it's the same way, right?
Yeah.
If you, I think chemistry and compatibility, and we'll get into the communication side of things, but really, and we can even talk, do a version of what compatibility means to us.
Sure.
As well. But to get started, right, that compatibility begins with knowing what your lifestyle is, sure, and then what you value and for yourself and what you're living up to every single day, and then where does it you want to go, right? And if that person aligns with you on those big picture ideas and goals, then there's a likelihood that the compatibility will be in a better position to have success than if it's just a flame and a fling. And those aren't bad either. Look, if you're not looking to date and you just want to go have fun, fucking go do that.
Yeah, sure.
Good luck. Let me know how it is on the dating app world.
I tried to
convince me.
I tried to convince Cavan so hard to get on the dating app before he started dating me.
I literally in that same week I had a buddy send me like exclusive celebrity dating app, and he was like, "Cavan, you would crush on this thing, man." And he like sent it to me, and I was like, I have no fucking desire to go talk to any of these people.
Zero.
Yeah, zero. Just don't have time for that shit. But that's where we are today. But if that's what you want, fucking go do it.
I did dating apps for a long time. They suck.
Yeah.
There was something that, and I was often, and if you follow me on social media through my single period, you know this, I was often sharing quotes and funny conversations and things about being single and navigating being a single woman. But I read a quote that was like, you have to, if a person is right for you, you have to fall in love with, because people oftentimes fall in love with someone's potential, who they could be in the future, right? If they got a job that they just really excelled at, then they'd be great. They'd be perfect. Or if they could just get their health and fitness, if they could just lose 20 or 30 pounds and be happy with their body, then they'd be perfect, right? So people are oftentimes falling in love with the potential of who this partner would be. And I don't remember exactly how the quote was phrased, but my mom keeps calling me. I don't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it was like, you have to fall in love with the person your partner is now and who they will become in the future. Even though that person is undefined, we don't have a crystal ball. I don't know who Cavan's going to be in 5 or 10 years. However, what I see in Cavan now and the person that I'm just totally obsessed with and I love right now, I know that 5 years from now, I'm going to love that Cavan too, because I'm in love with the version of the person that he is right now versus who he potentially could be 5 years from now if he just got a little better.
Yeah, and that's not to say like I don't have things to work on. We all do,
Oh, sure.
right? But the idea is like that understanding of who I am comes from me showing every day who I am and where I want to be.
Yeah.
And it takes part of my actions to do that.
Sure.
Right? And the other half of it is me looking back and realizing that I do not have a perfect past. There are a lot of mistakes and we don't have enough time for those today. But
well, we all do. And if you think that if you think that you were the perfect partner and you were in a relationship and it ended and you weren't the cause of any of the problems, you are very fucking wrong.
Right. And
we're all the root of a problem or two.
Oh, yeah. We definitely are. And
extreme ownership.
Going in and understanding those, right? And knowing that there is a subconscious chance that it might come back, right? And doing daily practices to be a better person for myself, be a better lover for you, being a better partner for you, and being a better, other half for our future is super important to me. But if that's not top of mind, right, then that never happens. So it takes a lot of work, and that's who I know I want to be today, and that's why this works out so well.
Yeah.
Right? So far, so good.
Yeah.
So.
I know that was a little long-winded, but I think it's good to share some of our story in there too.
Yeah. And I think, with everything that we touched on today, if we're going to recap real quick, understanding who you are as a person becomes before any.
If you're single, knowing yourself inside and out should be top priority before you get into a relationship.
Yeah.
If you can't predict what you want or how you would react in a certain situation or, what your goals, your expectations are for your own future, you cannot expect someone else to give a shit about any of that for you.
I think you said it better than I would. But yes, at the end of the day, knowing yourself from the inside out, right? Today, and then where you want to be, and then bridging the gap between the two to do what's necessary and take action on getting there. You don't need to be there by the time you're dating someone, but if you have an understanding of what that is and you're working on it, you're more likely to find that person to help you get there versus support you fully with where you are today.
Well, and growing together with someone who admires and is inspired by and supports your goals and your dreams for your future, I mean, that makes it even more fun to work on them.
Yeah, and that's what we've got.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Awesome. So what are we we're going to leave them with? What are we coming back with next time? Give them a little sneak peek.
Yeah, so next week, so today was kind of a roundabout way of our story and saying, becoming a partner that you're worth having or being a partner worth having.
Starts with you.
Starts with you. Next week, and we'll maybe make this a little more concise and a little more outlined, but identifying your perfect partner.
Yeah. And that's where we're going to go next. So
yeah,
appreciate you all listening in on another episode number 2 on our way to 1 million. That's the plan.
We got a long way to go.
But thanks for listening to An Uncomfortable Truth, and we'll chat with you guys real soon.
Yeah, see you later.
See ya.